So welcome here today. We're going to talk about anger. I am beaming in from the lands of the Snanawas or Nanoose First Nation on Vancouver Island. And I'm very happy to be here with you all today. I hope you had a great day. And I just wanted to just say briefly that Hollyhock is a lifelong learning center on Cortes Island, if you haven't visited us before. We offer programs in wisdom, wellness, creativity, movement, liberation, and the campus exists on the traditional and ancestral territories of the Klahoose, the Kla'amin, and the Homoko nations. This workshop is one of a series of workshops called HOCKSHOPs that have, popped up in this time of COVID-19 and sheltering in place. And HOCKSHOPs are basically a place to gather and get some practical advice on keeping our mental and physical and emotional and spiritual selves balanced and healthy in this very uncertain time. We're doing them every Monday and they're free or by donation. And today we are talking about anger with nonviolent communication coach Rachelle Lamb, who is joining us today. Rachelle, do you want to give a little wave? There she is. Okay, so I hope I haven't forgotten anything. I am going to launch into just a little bit about Rachelle. Rachelle is an author, trainer, and nonviolent communication coach specializing in conflict resolution and breakthrough conversations. Her lifelong interest in human development, relationship dynamics, and the roles that culture and ecology play in people's lives, along with her ability to skillfully pave the way for transformational dialogues between people, consistently produces powerful learning experiences for individuals and audiences. We've seen it ourselves at Hollyhock over the last 12 years that she's been teaching retreats with us, and we are so pleased to have her with us here today. Thank you so much, Rachelle, for joining us.
You're welcome. I, in fact, would have been at Hollyhock right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that got canceled. And so, did you want me to speak now for a little bit? Okay, and I'm just wondering, technically, can I turn this poll off that's on my screen, end poll, or do we keep that going?
I think Eitan was going to share the results of that poll.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sorry about that.
Okay.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I don't know where you all are, so I'm imagining for some people it might be later in the day, closer to evening. Maybe you're giving up one of your favorite Netflix in order to be here. So I want to just really say thank you for the time that you're allotting to this. And I'm hoping that it will be worthwhile for you. I'd like to start off with a poem by David Whyte, and it's called Loaves and Fishes. It goes like this. This is not the age of information. This is not the age of information. Forget the news and the radio and the blurred screen. This is a time of loaves and fishes. People are hungry, and one good word is bread for 1,000. This is a time of loaves and fishes. People are hungry, and one good word is bread for 1,000. And might that be something that we're able to really cultivate and carry along with us when we're in a rocky time, such as the one we're in now.
Thank you so much for that, Rachelle. That was lovely. So we're going to launch one more poll right now, and this poll will ask you about your motivations for attending this session. Why did you decide to come to this workshop in particular? And it will just sort of help us with the trajectory of the workshop. And if you wouldn't mind answering that poll, that would be great. If it doesn't pop up for you, then you can push or you can click on the polling button at the bottom of the screen and the poll should pop up. So if you wouldn't mind just clicking on that, that would be great. Okay. And Eitan, are you starting to see results come in from that poll?
Yes, I am.
Great. Okay, so we'll just give that a minute or so, give everybody a chance to take a look and answer that question. And then as we get those responses in, I'm going to let Eitan share the results, and then we're going to turn it over to Rachelle, and she's going to talk about some of the materials that she's going to be presenting here tonight. Eitan, do you want to share those results? Are we kind of?
Now.
Awesome, thank you. I'm not seeing the shared results. Are you seeing them?
I see them.
Okay, great.
I see them.
Okay, do you want to report back on those, Rachelle? They're not appearing for me.
I'd be happy to
Thanks.
report back. So 54% of you say you need help dealing with your own anger. 63% say that you need help responding to other people's anger. 23% of you are experiencing more anger and conflict since social restrictions, and 50% of you want to learn more about nonviolent communication, and 7% of you, none of the above, the mystery voters. So, well, that's not what I expected to see, but I'll just tell you what I did expect to see, and I am still going to carry on with the particular exercise I have for you, because it will address both the first and the second, dealing with your own anger, dealing with other people's anger. Of course, you'll be learning about NVC either way we go, and it will also help you to deal with the increased anger and conflict that you've had since the social restrictions. So, first of all, I think it would be useful just to talk about anger in the way that Marshall Rosenberg described it. He would say the following, and I think we can learn a lot from this. When I'm angry, 3 things are true. 1, there's something that I'm wanting that I'm not getting. 2, I'm thinking it should be given to me. 3, I'm about to speak or behave in a way that virtually assures I will not get what I want. And even if I do get what I want, it won't be given to me in the way that I would like it to be given to me. And so that's really important to just hold in your awareness. And it's the second one in particular that causes us a lot of problems. When I'm angry, 3 things are true. There's something I'm wanting, I'm not getting. 2, I'm thinking it should be given to me. And that's really critical for us to be aware of. So I am going to be doing what I normally would take 2 hours to condense this into a few minutes, just to give you a very brief overview of nonviolent communication. And so we could just break it down in the following ways. You can think about a spotlight. So when you're speaking, you could imagine that either the spotlight, you're focusing on the needs that you would be speaking about, or you could shift that spotlight over to the other person and concentrate on the needs that they're talking about. So you might be wondering, needs, I'm not really sure, Rachelle, what you mean by that. So in the nonviolent communication model, there are 4 steps that people are encouraged to take, and they can help to guide us when we're not sure how to speak, or when we know that the only thing we're going to say is probably going to create more misery than it's going to create any connection. So the first thing is to observe what it is we're seeing or hearing, And this sounds like a very easy thing to do, but it can be very challenging. We want to learn how to observe a behavior or, hear what other people are saying instead of evaluating them. And you'd be surprised how quickly we go to evaluation, and then which just overrides our capacity to connect. And so I'll just give you an example of that. If you were to say, okay, what's your observation? And the person said, well, you're really selfish. So that would not be an observation in the nonviolent communication understanding. What would an observation be? It would be something like, well, when I see you take the last piece of pie without checking first to see if anybody else would like it. There. This is a concrete observation, and it's something that the other person would agree with. Assuming all their faculties are there, they would agree that yes, they took the last piece of pie without checking, assuming that that's true, that they didn't check. All right. So that's a very important distinction. The second one is to state how we're feeling. And again, it's really tricky. It's so easy for people to go to an evaluative way of speaking about how they're feeling, and they're not speaking about feeling. Let me give you an example. If I say I feel disrespected, I'm not telling you anything about how I feel. I'm telling you how I'm evaluating your behavior. That's what I'm telling you. If I'm going to tell you how I feel, it would be something like I'm feeling hurt, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling surprised, I'm feeling confused, and I have a need for anger. Now, everybody has been, I hope that you have your handouts, and if you don't, I know that KK will send them to you after this session. But in the handouts that you have, at the very bottom here, you've got a list of words. And they are words that are often confused as feelings when in fact they are interpretations or assessments. I encourage everybody to study these words so that you never use them again. That's the idea. Just learn this language and really pay attention to the ones that you are most likely to use. And you could circle those and then, wonder about how you can express yourself more, I would say more faithfully in terms of what your feelings are. So that's the second step, feelings. The third is we speak about the needs that human beings have. For instance, food, water, shelter, those are basic needs. But relationship needs are things like honesty, trust, care, consideration, respect, meaning, purpose. Those are needs. And then the fourth step is to ask for what you would like as you're expressing yourself, and to be very concrete about what we would like. So you would never ask a person, for instance, would you be willing to be more sensitive? Or would you be willing to be more kind or more loving? These are not doable. What you want to do is state specifically the behavior changes that you want to see. So those are the four steps. There's also an alienating communication model that I think is of vital importance for people to know. If we don't pay attention to the alienating communication model, we run the risk of simply learning a language to put on top of our alienating way of thinking. And then what we do is we become manipulative. You're just, nothing's changed internally. You're just using different language and just praying that it might work out. The whole point of the nonviolent communication is to start to really change how we are in the world so that we can actually be deeper humans, so we can be in touch with what makes us human beings. So those four things that disconnect us are, the first one would be to diagnose. So that would be something like you're selfish, and instead of saying, making a comment about the pie, for instance. So it's diagnosing other people and it's thinking in terms of good, bad, right, wrong, appropriate, inappropriate, normal, abnormal, etc. The second is when we use demand language, we tell other people what to do, and it kind of, it takes all the joy out of people doing things, and it gives people only two options for the most part. they will either resist you, push back, or they will comply. But they'll do it in the following way. Okay, I'll do it. That kind of thing. Maybe they won't say anything, but that's the tonal quality. And so we don't want to be engaging with other people out of that energy of submission or rebellion. It's constitute a great loss of power for us as human beings when we can be cooperative. The third is a denial of personal responsibility. It's the way we speak about our feelings, for instance. If I say, you make me so angry, I'm not taking responsibility. And so we encourage people in nonviolent communication to connect their feelings to their needs instead of connecting them to other people's actions. I understand that other people's actions have an influence, but really what it comes down to is that we cherish something, we value something, and that's where the feelings come up. And we've observed something that's not lining up. So it has to do with the needs and what we care about that's being activated. And then the fourth one is deserved punishment. It's thinking that people need to be treated in a certain way in order to become good human beings. And what happens in those situations is people become externally motivated instead of intrinsically motivated. So how's the timing, KK? Okay. How much more? Now I should look at that here. I just want to check in with you about how much more time I have.
You're good. Yeah, we're right on time for the exercise if you'd like.
Okay, so I can go into that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, now I want to share a quote with you because I think this can be also really helpful. I do encourage poetry a lot, and I'm not going to read a poem to you, I'll do that later. But anything that gets us out of the familiar territory of let me see, having to work hard for a living, the 9 to 5, the status quo, the whatever it is that you have to do. And we are right now in the midst of a beautiful break. Not everybody, but a lot of people are having the opportunity to rethink what's important. So here's the quote I wanted to share with you. It's from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each man's life sorrow and suffering to disarm, we should find in each man's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. I do believe when we can really sit with people for a lengthy amount of time and really hear their story, it changes how we feel about them. And the truth is, we have less and less time because of our lifestyles. But if we could remember that, it would be helpful. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to ask for a volunteer, and I'll just let you know that when you do volunteer, this is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, then don't volunteer. But I am wondering if anybody has got a situation, and I'm sure since we're over 100 people, and you can please chat it or write it in the chat line. Tell me a situation where you've been angry. And I'm going to choose one to work with. So we can do this exercise together, and then everybody will know this. Oh, and on a scale from 1 to 10, I would say give it about a 6. And I would also encourage you to make it a situation where the anger is with someone you know, not with someone who cut you off in traffic, for instance. All right. Okay. You know, the one I'm going to go with is Audra Joy. Everyone in the family neglects chores, so it's all on you.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty common one.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking at it. It's like, yeah, that's familiar territory. And
Lots of fights.
whether it's at home or whether it's at the workplace, it's going to be the same kind of, energy. It's like, you're doing it all at work. That's your impression anyway. And other people are, taking long breaks or whatever it is that they're doing. Yeah. So would Audra, is it Audra who wrote that?
You got it right, Audra.
Okay, Audra, I'm wondering if I can I see you or?
I can turn I had my video off because my kids were doing a transition day, so they were running around.
Yeah.
Fighting too.
All right. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. So everybody has a handout. You don't need to look at that handout now, but it's something that I'm going to be working off of. Okay. So you'll be able to work with it yourselves. So recalling a time that you're angry, to write the stimulus about what the other person said or did. So it could be, what would you say it is, the stimulus, Audra? We want to make sure it's an observation now.
I see that you're not putting in your fair share of work around the house.
Okay, well, let me just tell you right away that is not going to qualify as an observation.
Okay.
But,
yeah, I guess. I see that you're just sitting there playing a Nintendo Switch game.
Okay. Okay. They're sitting there playing that, but not just sitting there doing it. Okay. So playing Nintendo.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to be writing this down. Okay. And then I'll hold it up for people afterwards. So playing Nintendo. And what are you doing? Because I'm guessing you're doing some things.
All the work. All the chores.
Let's
Most of the chores. Cleaning the house. I am cleaning the house.
Okay, great. You see the difference that this is going to make? Okay,
yes.
So cleaning the house. Now, a lot of times when people are learning nonviolent communication, they're under the impression that judgments are bad, so I'd like to straighten that out right now. Judgments are not bad. In fact, you can't get through a day in your life without being able to use your mind in that way to make distinctions and to know, is it safe for me to cross the street, for instance, that kind of thing. But when we're using a judgmental language, or I would call it actually rigid, there's a rigidity, and we get very contracted. So, and by the way, it's not to say people shouldn't be angry. There's plenty of reasons to be angry. It's just whether or not it's going to be a constructive and generative, or is it going to create toxicity? So let's hear some of the judgments you have about your son. So it'll start with he, and you can include yourself. I'm doing all the work. We can put that in there because this is an evaluation. So if I hear about 5 of your judgments about your son. Is it your son?
Well, both kids,
okay.
Daughter and son.
Okay, yeah. About your 2 kids, either one.
Lazy.
Okay, the kids are lazy. I'll write, my kids are lazy.
And slobs.
They're slobs.
Messy. Klutzy. This is being really extreme. I'm being really extreme about it.
What was the last one that you said?
Klutzy.
What does that mean? I'm not sure.
Careless, like not paying attention to what they're doing, so they knock over things and break them. And
I'll put careless because I know how to spell that.
Careless, yeah, klutz.
Okay. And I will add to this, I'm doing all the work, okay? Because you can hear like I'm doing all the work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is when we say that, it's going to piss us off even more. All right. Okay, I'm hoping that this is legible for you. Okay. So, now I can't see myself. Just let me see. Oh, yeah, no, I can. Okay, there we go. Everybody can see that?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about, I forgot how to write lazy there, but could you just read each of those out loud?
My kids are lazy, they're slobs, they're careless. I'm doing all the work.
Awesome. Okay. Now, would you mind doing it again? And this time, before each of the 4 sentences, would you say, I'm telling myself the story that?
I'm telling myself the story that my kids are lazy. I'm telling myself the story that they're slobs. I'm telling myself the story that they're careless. And I'm telling myself the story that I'm doing all the work.
Yeah. Any difference between the two?
Yeah, I sound horrible.
No, I don't want you to judge yourself.
No,
Here, let me ask you this.
yeah, there's probably more frustration and anger in my voice the first time around than the second.
And here's another question. Which one is absolutely true? Is it true that your kids are lazy, or is it true that you're telling yourself the story that they're lazy?
The second.
Yeah. So what happens is that when we recognize that we're telling ourselves a story, that there's a narrative, which, by the way, doesn't mean that your kids couldn't be helping out more. I just want to make that clear, okay? Because
Yeah.
we want them to help out more.
Yeah.
But what it does is you realize that we're putting a lot of charge into the way we say it. And partly that's because we're really wanting to be heard about what it is that's causing so much angst inside of us. So now each one of these judgments has got a need. All judgments are tragic expressions of unmet needs. So let's just quickly go through each one of these and find out what the needs are. So, and this isn't a time now, everybody, if you can guess what the need is for each statement, I'll say the statement, and if you want to write it down in the chat, then we'll have some needs here. So this is how we're going to transform or make the anger where you can express it in a way that's more likely for the other person to hear it. My kids are lazy. What is Audra's need when she's saying this? Let's see. Is anybody writing anything? And Audra, you can just say it if support. There we go. Help, support, consideration.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to write that down. What about their slobs? What would the need be there? Order. Yeah, it's going by so fast.
Ooh, look at that.
Yeah, order. Yes. Cleanliness. Beauty. Yeah, for sure. So you can see how many needs are coming up, right? And here's the other thing I want you to notice. You already know this. Is that great? You already, like, the needs are alive in you. It's not that hard for you to figure it out. Contribution, collaboration. All right. And I'm doing all the work. I think it's another way of saying that you have a need for contribution, collaboration. We've got reliability here. So I want you to see what's happened. You see all those needs? Now, so nonviolent communication encourages us to speak a language of needs instead of a language of evaluation. The needs have always been there. So Audra, could you tell me what 3 needs stand out the most for you?
Support.
Yeah.
Order.
Yeah.
Contribution.
Okay. So I'm just going to write those down. Support, order, contribution.
And I would add one.
Yes?
Respect.
Okay. Great that you've thrown that one in. But here's the thing I'm glad you brought it up, because as a parent, I'm pretty sure that as parents, we use the word respect, kids understand it a certain way. They understand it this way. Oh, you mean obedience to authority, which means you. Is that what you're talking about? So I do encourage, whenever people are in positions of power, to use a different language, like consideration, for instance, would be one, because people automatically, I don't know if you've noticed that, Audra, with your children, but if you say I have a need for respect, they'll just be like, I don't know your kids. I don't know how they're going to answer to that, but it's not something that they usually go, oh, I get it. Of course you have a need for respect. They don't typically do that. And that's what we're trying to get to. So that word can be very charged. So I'm not saying never use it. I'm saying be very cautious if you have positional power and you use that word.
Yeah.
So here are the needs that are really present for you. So I encourage people now to just think about times when that need is not met. Right now you feel angry. Are there other feelings there? And other people could chime in too.
Mm.
Alone, sad.
Stress.
Yeah.
Depression. Yeah.
Yeah. Tired. Okay. And then I'd like you to think about times when you do actually feel, when those needs are fulfilled. How do you feel?
Proud.
Here, I'll add one more thing. Don't think about the scenario anymore. 2. Just think about when your need for order, support, contribution, respect is met, whether you're at home, whether you're at work. Okay, we've got connected, relaxed.
Calm. Yeah, calm.
Okay. Joyful. Okay. All right. Imagine if we learned to speak like that. Yeah. So this is what you would then be bringing into the conversation. And what I encourage people to do, I have you doing 2 lists of feelings here, the feelings when the needs are not being met, but also the feelings when the needs are being met, because I have found that people generally have a lot more success in being heard if they come to the conversation with a fullness. It's like a morning is really what it is. And so you could speak to your children and say, like, just get into a place of connection for yourself and being relaxed and say, look, when I see you playing these games and I'm, trying to prepare a meal or I'm house cleaning, I feel alone. I feel sad, maybe choose a couple of the words. I feel alone and sad because I have a need for support and order and contribution. I think just going with those 3 needs, you'd already reach them in a different way. Does that make sense? So let me illustrate, or it might be something like this. Oh, when I see you there playing your games and I'm looking at the things that need attention, I'm feeling alone. I'm feeling some sadness. I really want to enjoy my relationship with you, and I want for you to enjoy the relationship with me. And, I have a need for support and order and contribution. And I'm wondering if when, in 30 minutes or in 15 minutes, whatever you decide, would you be willing to help me do the following? See how that works out, Now the idea is to actually, you could even say, I don't know how to ask you to help out. We live in this home together and I just don't know how to do it. Do you have any ideas? Like, I would encourage a conversation, asking the kids to say something about it. Now, because we have such limited time, I normally, this would be a much longer exercise, and I would, really encourage people to get into the embodied place of, wow, how do we do this thing called living alone? Sorry, not living alone. You're probably dying to live alone, maybe, but how do we do this thing called living together? How do we do it? Surely it can't fall all to one person or just to a few people. How do we all, engage in a way that meets everybody's needs to contribute? That's what I'm longing for. Martin Luther King is a really great example of someone who knew how to express, I would say, like transformed anger. He's speaking about having a dream, and you could do that. You could say, I have a dream that we, kind of intuitively and instinctively know how to take care of all of the things that need attention in this house. What do you say? Because Martin Luther King Jr. didn't say, I have a grievance and I'm sick and tired of all you racist people. He didn't say that. He said, I have a dream. And so to transform the anger, I would just start by that. I have a dream. And I've encouraged people to do that. And I've had people report back to me, say, you know what? I went home. I stood in the kitchen. I looked at my family. I told them I had a dream that we were all helping each other out. They looked at me like I was insane, but it shifted things. And that's the important thing, because we all know where we're going if we just keep doing what we've always done. So this is an opportunity to just use the language in a, let your heart show, So, yeah. Timing, KK?
Rachelle, I just wanted to just make note, there's been a lot of stuff in the chat, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's been going very quickly, and I know you probably haven't had time to look at it, but there were some people asking about the possibility of being able to workshop, instead of maybe going into breakout groups as we had sort of originally planned, workshop with somebody that is currently like feeling anger, rage, frustration at the current sort of state of racial injustice and kind of like what's happening in the States, in North America, and wondering if this exercise might, be able to be workshopped in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just wondering about the best way to go about doing that.
Yeah, I know it's a bit of a different
it is
scenario.
Different. Yeah. I would, what one of the most important needs is mourning. And it's really a good idea not to have enemy images. So as long as you have an enemy image, it's going to be very hard for any connection to happen. And any situation like that one, if you're angry, I go to empathy. This exercise I just did with you is a way for you to empathize with yourself when you're angry. But when someone else is angry, you would empathize with that person. So what you're doing is, like right now, I just showed you very quickly how to assess the underlying needs that are there in somebody's evaluation. So, I'm happy to respond to a question about that specifically, because you can't solve the problem, right? It's hard when it's cultural, it's political, it's global. But what you can do is you can connect with your needs for, a world where people care about each other, where we have police forces in the world that are protecting people. This was I wouldn't say, I don't know, but nonviolent communication makes a distinction between punitive use of force and protective use of force. And protective use of force should never be violent or kill a person. In that sense, it's not protective. Yeah. So
Yeah, thank you for that, Rachelle. Do you think we should move into breakouts and then do the Q&A afterwards as originally planned?
yeah, I think it would be good. Someone asked about saying more about an enemy image. I'd be happy to do that. Is simply having any evaluations and judgments. You know, I'll give you an example. Is okay, all four of the policemen should be, you know, should definitely be placed on trial, should all be arrested. That is just so horrible. It's so wrong. I hope justice is done. There's a certain tone in what I'm saying that pretty much guarantees that these types of narratives or situations will actually occur again. It's much bigger. It's much bigger than 4 policemen. Yeah. And it's much bigger than 1 Black man dying. It's, you know, it's very, very sad is what it is. And we need to start asking the question that Marshall asked, which is, what is it that makes it, what is it that helps us stay connected to our humanity? The other question is, what disconnects us from our humanity? And that's a really important question to ask. What has happened that we're living in a culture where it seems to be so easy for people, and people who are trusted, you know, or apparently supposed to be trusted, to remain connected to humanity. So being human is a hard thing, and there's just no guarantees that because, you know, people have reached a certain age or have certain credentials that that's what's going on. So it's such a big, big subject, but mourning is a very valuable place to go and recognize that we have those enemy images because it's so hard to mourn and just get in touch with the needs that we have. Yeah.
Thank you.
A lot of work needs to be done there, a lot.
Yeah. I just wanted to invite Jay Castro, who put a question in the chat. Jay, did you want to unmute yourself and ask the question? Or if not, I can ask it from the chat if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm just having a slow time scrolling back to it. But yeah, essentially, the situations of escalation at a certain degree, having that escalation enter or allow danger to enter the circumstance to a point where not taking action is dangerous, just as taking action would also be dangerous, and trying to navigate, yeah, what to do in that at that point.
You know, I don't know. You know, nonviolent communication doesn't offer what to do, but rather how to be. And protective use of force, you know, protective use of force doesn't mean you're going to be safe or anybody's going to be safe. And I could say we have a need for safety for sure, but that doesn't mean we are safe. So, so nonviolent communication will increase your capacity to hold what's happening and to see the needs and try to respond to the needs instead of to the evaluations. But, you know, to protect yourself, you know, I'm not sure what the options are and what you're asking, you know, but protecting yourself or protecting others may not be safe. That to me is no reason not to do it though. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Rachelle. I think there's a lot of people here with so many different reasons to be here right now.
Yeah.
The anger is brimming. It's overwhelming at times. And I think it might be a good idea for us to go into breakout rooms just so we have that ability to talk with each other in small groups, and just be heard. So I encourage that we are going to do breakout rooms, of 3 people. Everybody gets about 3 minutes each just to talk. And I encourage you to speak leanly, and if you're not speaking, to listen actively. So this is not necessarily a conversation. It's more of an invitation to listen and to speak where you're coming from right now today. So I will, and actually the prompt, I believe, I think, we can kind of open it up. I think everybody's kind of here for very different reasons, as I was saying. So I think we should open it up to, discussing or talking about how this exercise can inform conflict for you, conflict that is happening in your life, or just like, why are you here? Why did you come here today? What is it that you're dealing with in terms of anger, in terms of rage, frustration, all of those things? Rachelle, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, and if any of those are not, not drawing you in, you might also just want to consider, how would things be different, do you think, if we did speak a language of needs? Yeah, I had expected that might come up. And it's such a big subject, it's not that I'm not willing to respond to it. It's just that I'm also aware that in the group, there's people who are wanting to just deal with the things at home. And truth of the matter is, if you can take care of the things at home and be in good relationship with the people at home when conflict arises, it gives you a greater capacity to be with other people and, to understand what's going on more, globally. So in that sense, I think it's okay. It's useful to focus on what goes on at home.
Mm-hmm. Right. So increasing your own capacity.
Yeah, and also because I'm aware of the fact that in this particular context, can help a parent maybe engage more harmoniously and more fulsomely with their child. That but you can't change what's happened out there already. And so I'm thinking about how people are going to leave, in an hour, in the short time that we have, that they have some sense of, this is something I can do at home. For you to apply this in the larger context, of course, but one thing that's really useful is to understand why conflict or why war or why racism exists. That would be the starting point. I would encourage people to look, why are those things there? Because people are not, as far as I know, babies are not born with an agenda to be mean-spirited or to be hostile, and if you study or if you've read anything about indigenous cultures and how people are with each other, it's you don't see the kind of violence that is in our culture. So these things stem, they're cultural issues, they're developmental issues, they're, how were you raised as a child? Did you feel like you could approach your mother and your father? Is the fact that you couldn't approach them, or you didn't have a father there, or you didn't have a mother, or you didn't have support, is made you angry, and now you're lashing out at the rest of the world? So they're huge. Mm-hmm. They're huge issues, and so it's a lot. I mean, I applaud people for wanting to address these things. Of course, we ought to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it would be helpful to talk about that, like in terms of dealing with conflict within your own home, or within, like in a sort of more micro level, in order to preserve or maintain your capacity to deal with your sort of more outward facing anger at more of a societal and larger sort of injustice that's really just kind of, yeah. brimming up for a lot of people. But I think that that would be helpful for sure in kind of addressing that. I'm sure it will come up in the Q&A, which we'll have right after these breakout rooms, and it may go back and forth. So it might go back and forth between, you know, sort of different topics and stuff like that. So
I did see someone asked a question that, you know, I'm thinking could be useful, which was they're wanting to learn how to respond to someone who's angry at home. Oh, yes. So it was Katrina. I'd like to understand how I can support a family member who is angry. Again, I think that's probably something that many people are experiencing.
So everyone will be joining us in another less than 2 minutes.
okay, thanks, Eitan.
Yeah. During that time, I'll recite one of the poems that Marshall had written. It definitely applies to this, and it was a song that he wrote for his son Brett, who at the time was 16 years old. And it goes like this: if I clearly understand you intend no demand, I'll usually respond when you call. But when you come across like a high and mighty boss, you'll feel like you ran into a wall. And when you remind me so piously about all the things you've done for me, you better get ready. Here comes another bout. Then you can shout, you can spit, moan, groan, and throw a fit. I still won't take the garbage out. Now, even if you should change your style, it's going to take me a little while before I can forgive and forget, because it seems to me that you didn't see me as human too until all your standards were met.
Nice.
Yeah, I find it to be a very poignant poem or song, because it so beautifully illustrates the dynamic that happens between us and other people. And all of us, I think, have been on the receiving end of that and have been on the delivering end of that. It just really reveals whoa, is this what we want to do? You know? Which is why I mentioned in the earlier piece around respect. When parents say they have a need for respect, you know, the younger people in the household usually think that they think it means, oh, I get it. You're the boss and you want me to do whatever you tell me to do, like take the garbage out, right? So, yeah.
Okay, I think we're welcoming everybody back into the room.
Right. While you're doing that, I think I will speak to the question I saw from, I think it's Katrina Tabet. I'd like to understand how I can support a family member who is angry. And the best thing to do is to not see an angry person, but to see somebody who has some needs that they don't know how to express, or it's so precious, so important to them that it creates a kind of a volatility or toxicity. So, you know, whatever the person is angry about, you would ask them, you know, it sounds like you're feeling really frustrated and you have a need to be heard about this matter, you know, and I'd like to hear more. What is, you know, tell me more about that. But it's it depends on the context. You know, it's really hard to go too far into an example without actually knowing the context of a situation. Because the context is actually where you will uncover the needs. Yeah.
There's a question from Sandhu. Oh, I just lost it, darn. How do I deal with the situation when I try to follow NVC, but I think the other person does not? I'm aware that is already a no judgment of the other party.
Yeah. Is that person willing to?
That was from Sandhu. Are you willing to speak to that, Sandhu?
First of all, yeah. Sandhu, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So what is the question you're wanting to?
Well, I've been attending, we No, myself, no, my wife and I have attended a seminar with you a couple of years back, few years back.
Okay. Yeah.
And I read the book and I watched the Marshall Rosenberg video, and I'm trying to follow NVC. But I get discouraged when I think the other person doesn't. And I'm aware that as soon as I say the other person doesn't, I'm passing judgment, which is a no-no.
Yeah.
So how do I deal with that?
Okay. So, you know, when you're really practicing nonviolent communication, the other person can't not be also not practicing it. I know what you mean, though. Because there's already an otherness happening, you know, if the other person's not doing it. So nonviolent communication, for it to be working, it doesn't mean other people suddenly turn around and go, wow, I love the way you're speaking to me, and now I'm going to do whatever it is you want, or I feel so connected now the way that you're speaking to me. That's not typically what happens. It takes people time before they warm up. And it's not because of you necessarily, it's because of how people have been enculturated, what kinds of challenges they've had in their life. You know, we are born into, at least in the dominant culture, there's a lot of separation that goes on, and it's normalized. And so people can be very mistrustful. And I would say appropriately so. When you're trying nonviolent communication, they could be thinking, oh, I know, you're just trying to get me to do something. You're just trying to manipulate me. At which point, this is when you could empathize with them and say, you know, I'm getting the sense that the way I'm speaking to you is challenging for you to hear. Would I be right about that? Yeah, I know you're trying to make me do something, and I don't want to do it. Well, thank you for bringing that up, because I don't want you doing anything that you don't want to do. And I guess I do sound a bit weird. I am trying to do something. How can I tell you what's alive in me and how much I really want to connect with you without it sounding like a threat to you? Could you tell me? You know, I'm really longing to connect with you, and I'm trying this because from what I've seen, it can increase the likelihood of you and I connecting, and I really care about you and I care about our relationship. What do you say? There. Something like that.
Thank you. Well, I guess it's a long life learning process here.
Well, it is. It's super long. I mean, I've been studying this specifically for the past 20 years, and I am not going to call myself an expert. No. So yeah, because we're trying to work with an education that's based on domination and alienation, and that is a lifelong thing if you're born into that, as most of us have been. Yeah.
Thank you, Rachelle.
You're very welcome. It's nice to, yeah, I think I remember you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sandy, for the question. Natalie asks a question. In our discussion in the breakout rooms, I think, two of us wanted to know how to approach a family member about being angry about our decision around COVID-19. Is Natalie wanting to speak to this a little bit?
Sure.
Great, thanks, Natalie.
I can speak to it. So it was myself and Bridget if she wanted to share as well, but in my case, I live in Quebec, and the government has allowed us parents to make the choice of returning our children to school or not. Mm-hmm. My sister lives in Ontario and has 2 children as well, and the Ontario government does not allow them to go back to school. My sister is very angry at me for choosing to send my son to school. Yeah, so we had 2 text message exchanged, and when I tried to call her so we could talk about it, she refused to speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
So we had, Bree was in our discussion, and she helped me a lot to work through this.
Yeah. What I would probably ask your sister is, you know, you want to empathize with her. And I'm guessing that you're surprised and perplexed that I've made this choice. Would that be right? And I'm guessing you're maybe scared too, because you have a need for my well-being, my children's well-being. Yeah, and have I got it? Have I guessed accurately?
Mm-hmm.
That you see, there's no resisting, you know, because most people won't say, they don't articulate what's truly alive. They have their response to it, you know. So it, you know, if she were practicing that, you know, what we're learning here, she'd probably approach you and just say, wow, when I hear that you're sending your children to school, I find myself feeling scared and anxious because I really care about you and I care about my niece and nephew, you know, whoever it is. And I'm worried. And, you know, do you need some help? Can I support, you know, whatever it is. People will probably try to come up with some way of supporting, but that's the need, I'm going to guess, is essentially for your well-being and your children's well-being.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she texted me saying that she couldn't sleep at night and so worried and crying. Okay. But I guess my response came back to, well, I'm sorry my decision has had that effect on you. Like, but at this point in time, this is what we're choosing to do. Mm-hmm. And I guess I didn't address her feelings, so I didn't validate
the need. The need is the most important part there. The need is like, I'm really scared. I'm terrified. I care about you, and I care about, you know, our family, your children. I'm scared. Mm-hmm. That's what's in there. Yeah. People care about people's health and well-being. Yeah.
Maybe we have another dynamic going on as well, but I just felt like I need her to trust me, that I also have the best interest, and I wouldn't be making a decision that, you know, puts other people in danger or that is super risky.
Yeah.
But there is no risk zero. I know that.
Yeah. The truth is we really don't know, right? And I suspect here's what you and your sister are doing.
That's exactly what I sent her.
Yeah. Okay. So
I sent her that as a text message.
Yeah. And so to see what the other person is seeing is to see that, well, yeah, she cares about, you know, the health and well-being of the family. So do you. But one of the most challenging things is that we don't have shared understandings about things. Mm-hmm. You know, and I get anxious about even saying this word, but it's the same, you know, conversation that would happen between, you know, when you talk about anti-vaxxer, or are you for or against vaccination? You both have the same needs, I assure you, for the health and well-being of the people, of all the people, but very, very different ways of approaching it. So. But I think that we can be a lot closer to each other when we recognize, in particular in family, you know, because I'm guessing with your sister, you do have a relationship and there's some closeness there, that you'd be like, wow, yeah, I'm really touched by how much you care, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm wondering if there's more you'd like me to hear about this. Would probably be a question I'd ask. Mm-hmm. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think that brings us to time. We're at 6:30 now. And this is obviously very rich and fertile ground to be exploring right now. Somebody did ask, Carol asked, is there a way for any of us here to connect to practice NVC in the future? It is such a great opportunity. Rachelle, do you know of any sort of resources that we can send to people after this in terms of connecting outside of this workshop and in sort of deeper discussion?
You know, I can't say that I do. I know there are a lot of resources. There's the NVC Academy for one, you know, there's the Center for Nonviolent Communication. There's my website, and I am doing a 3-week course that starts on June the 13th, 3 weekly Saturdays from 10 a.m. to noon. So that's also, that's where I actually am teaching a lot, you know, in much greater detail. There's a real challenge in trying to provide a lot of information, or actually it's not the information. It's being able to go back to that first quote. You know, if we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each person's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. And these particular tools can help bring us into that place. You know, it's really, to me, it's about deepening as humans. It's not about formula. It's about deepening. I do have a poem to read, KK, and I wonder when is the time for me to share it as a...
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah.
It'd be lovely.
This is fittingly called Inseparable by the poet Mark Nepo, who I know some of you will have heard of. A small voice swept through the hole in my heart, right there in the middle of a day, filled with the sweetness of things outlasting our mistakes. The voice led me to a thatch of berries I had to eat, though the berries were nested in a ring of thorns. But this was the only food that would heal, and everything I'd been through, every path I'd tried, every love I'd lost, every friendship I'd held onto like a handle in a fire, every certainty that had crumbled into doubt, all of it said, this is the only food. The small voice whispered, there is no other way but to bury your face and eat of these berries. Of course you'll scratch your cheeks. Of course you'll bleed. But this is life. The berries nested in the thorns, inseparable as love nested in loss, as peace nested in trouble. Like God, waiting as a berry to be eaten, all tangled in the thorns. Mark Nepo, Inseparable.
Love him.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Rachelle. Thank you
Thanks,
so much
Rachelle.
for joining us today. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate seeing all of you. And for those of you that donated, thank you, thank you, thank you.